Very good evening and welcome once again to the AIOC 2021, the 79th virtual conference. Let's begin with our session. I would like to thank Dr. Nilesh and Dr. Santosh. Hope you had a good time. So first, I would like to introduce all our chairpersons. Dr. Subhadra, a warm welcome to you. Very good evening. Another second chairperson, Dr. Sucheta. Welcome, Dr. Sucheta.
Thank
I'd
you.
also like to introduce our chairperson, Dr. Parag. Welcome, Dr. Parag. And I'd like to welcome our chairperson, Dr. Sharad Bhumaj. Welcome, Dr. Sharad.
Yeah, thanks. Hello, everybody.
All the chairpersons, you can now unmute your mic. You're already on with your camera. I would now request our chairperson to please invite our first speaker for the presentation. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to see all young people here. I think I'm only the old gray-haired lady here. Everybody else is young. And really, every time it gives so much pleasure that from a hall, which used to be the last hall with 20 participants, ROP is now on mainstream of AIUS because of your hard work. So let's get going. The first speaker, Dr. Nilesh Kakade, he will speak on the screening guidelines. Go ahead, Nilesh.
Yeah.
And people can write their questions in the chat box. We'll be happy to take them at the end of the session. 8 minutes for each talk.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, chairpersons. I would start my topic. This is screening guidelines for ROP. We all know that with improved survival of very low birth infants in India, retinopathy of prematurity is a significant cause of visual impairment. It has economic as well as social implications which are severe and of longer duration in terms of blind years. But then again, early and prompt treatment offers a very high success rate in management of ROP. And hence, a very good screening program with clear guidelines in place is very important for detection and treatment of ROP. So, what should be the aim of the screening? As we all know that it has a window of opportunity in case of ROP that is between 32 weeks to 42 weeks. Hence, so the foremost aim of the screening is to detect all treatable neonates at the right time. On the other side, it should also keep the volume of the screening under control so as to not to waste time in screening those who are not likely to develop ROP or a severe disease. So during formulating all these guidelines, which are the factors we have to consider, especially in Indian scenario? First of all, low birth weight and low gestational age are the two important risk factors of ROP. Then presence of risk factors, as we all know, like RDS, sepsis, multiple blood transfusion, multiple births, apneic episodes, IVH, etc. are again risk factors. Then, especially in India, occurrence of treatable disease in larger babies also has to be considered when we are deciding upon the screening guidelines. Then also the second factor is difficulty in accurate calculation of the PCA, especially in a country like ours. And then again, better understanding of zone 1 disease and APROP with higher chances of progression to sight-threatening ROP. Also, availability of resources, awareness, variable presentations further make the task very complex. Hence, the screening guidelines may differ in different countries. Today, we'll focus on screening guidelines as far as India is concerned. Now, screening guidelines in India will see whom to screen, when to screen, and where to screen. So, the government in India set up a national ROP task force, which commissioned a group of experts representing neonatal care, eye care, public health experts, and program managers. They were assigned a job to develop operational guidelines for ROP. They considered several factors in preparing the guidelines, developed India-specific strategies and protocols to implement ROP services in India. Considering factors specific to India, the screening factors criteria has been kept very broad. So we come to whom to screen. All infants born at 34 weeks or less gestational age, all infants weighing 2000 grams or less at birth, all infants born at more than 34 weeks of gestation age, but with the discretion of neonatologist, if is associated with risk factors, that can also be a candidate for screening. Now, when to screen? Basically, the timing is decided like first screening should be scheduled at a time when the early stage of ROP is visible. At the same time, the stage is not so advanced such that therapy cannot be carried out. So the first examination is 32 weeks of PCA or 4 weeks after birth. No need to examine in first 2 weeks. If there is a problem in calculating PCA, to examine all eligible neonates at 4 weeks or before 30 days of birth. In cases of very low birth weight neonates, that is less than 1200 gram or GA less than 28 weeks, early screening between 2 to 3 weeks is recommended. Now, when to screen again, preferably in SNCU or NICU before discharge. If the neonate is discharged, screening can be done in ophthalmologist clinic where required facilities, or patient can be followed up in SNCU or in NICU. Screening to be done with an indirect ophthalmoscope by trained ophthalmologist, or a retinal imaging using a wide field camera by trained personnel. Screening team should visit the screening center on the same day of the week and the same time, so that the discharged babies can be brought back for the screening if required. Now, we have to take one of these 3 decisions at the end of each screening. No further screening required if the retina is mature or the ROP has regressed spontaneously. Further screening at less than 1 week, 2 weeks, if the retina is immature or the ROP is present, or we have to decide whether the baby requires the treatment. Then documentation and communication. Findings and the management decision at each screening must be recorded in the medical records. The date of the next screening, if needed, must be documented in the discharge medical records and discharge summary. And the date for next screening must be communicated to the parents verbally and also in writing. Now, slight difference in guidelines as far as American Academy of Pediatrics, which considers as less than or equal to 1500 grams and 30 weeks of gestational age, and NNF guidelines says 1750 grams. But currently we consider 2000 grams as an eligibility criteria because of occurrence of treatable ROP or sight-threatening ROP in bigger babies in India, as demonstrated in studies. So to summarize, birth weight of less than 2000 grams or less, gestational age 34 weeks or less, some cases with the discretion of the treating neonatologist. First screening to be done within 30 days of birth, preferably in the SNCU, NICU, before discharge. And in cases with birth weight less than 1200 grams or gestational age less than 28 weeks, screening at 2 to 3 weeks after birth is recommended. And few sentences about awareness. We have observed a very poor awareness among healthcare providers as well. A study carried out at our institute, we found that poor awareness was among 55% of the interviewed pediatricians and 15% of interviewed ophthalmologists. That is regarding the screening guidelines. So we have to work in this direction for increasing the awareness. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor, to finish well before in time. We still have time for some questions if anybody would like to take, or I would request our chairpersons to introduce the next speaker.
Dr. Subhadra, can I ask you a question? What screening guidelines you use as far as age and birth weight at LV Prasad?
I think everyone should use only the Government of India Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyagram National Task Force guidelines, because they are the only ones which are going to stand in a court of law. That's the only one which is sort of given by the government directions, and I think it's best to use that. In case we are deviating from that guideline for any reason, for example, in some of the very high quality centers like Holiday Institute, they may not be seeing this type of babies. They may not be seeing very big babies with ROP because the quality of care is very good. If they change the guideline, then it should be endorsed by some committee or whatever, and then they should mention why it has been changed. But otherwise, basically, when we say these are national guidelines endorsed by Government of India, I don't think anybody should deviate from that. So everyone, even the National Neonatology Forum guideline which was shown, that was the old guideline which was released in 2010. Now this year, like last year, they have again revised their guidelines, and their guidelines are exactly what is given by the Government of India. So everybody should use that, encourage that, talk to your neonatologist and see that that guideline is only followed. It is available very freely on the RBSK website. For those who don't have it, it has both the newborn eye care guidelines, universal newborn eye care guideline, and the ROP guideline in the same document.
Thank you, Chairperson. May I request you to please now invite our next speaker? Thank you.
So it's a great pleasure to invite Dr. Deeksha Katoch for the next talk, which will be the examination technique and the protocols to be followed while examining. Go ahead, Deeksha.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And thank you to all the esteemed panelists and the AIOS for this opportunity. I will now share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, your screen is visible and you're good to go.
Thank you. So the topic, my topic here is ROP examination technique and protocol. So from Dr. Nilesh's talk, we learned that this is just a summary of what ROP management should involve. So it should involve that it requires that at-risk infants receive carefully timed retinal examinations by an ophthalmologist on a scheduled basis according to their gestational age at birth and their subsequent disease severity. So Dr. Nilesh has very nicely covered who these at-risk infants are likely to be and what is the timing at which the initiation of examinations should start. So we know that preterm birth has a variable degree of avascular retina. The nasal retina will vascularize around 10 months, but the temporal retina will take around 10 months to vascularize. So if the infant is born premature, we can expect that physiologically we will have a variable degree of avascular retina. As was rightly mentioned in the previous talk, that ROP does not develop at birth, and it develops in a dynamic fashion over time, which we need to detect. And what we are looking at while we are trying to examine the infant retina is the junction of the normally vascularized and the avascular retina. To what extent has the retina vascularized, and what are the changes that are happening at that vascular-avascular junction? Because ROP develops in a phased manner. The first phase is the phase of vasoobliteration, where the normal retinal vascularization process stops. And then the phase 2, which is the phase of retinal neovascularization and is characterized by abnormal neovascular proliferation. So basically, when we are examining, we are looking at this junction and the changes that we see at it. So the first, so we know whom to screen, we know when to screen. So I will cover how to screen. So how to examine? So it is, as we mentioned by Dr. Nilesh, that we can examine bedside, we can do the examination within the NICU, within the incubator, under the radiant warmer, as well as at in the ophthalmology clinic. So generally, we try to withhold the last feed an hour before the examination. The examination has to be done with under a dilated pupil, and for that purpose, we use phenylephrine 2.5% and tropicamide 0.8%. The commercially available preparation has 5% phenylephrine, so it has to be diluted to half. Nowadays, we also have commercially available 2.5% combination drops, and if that is available, that can be used. And sometimes we may use a cyclopentolate. So one drop in each eye has to be instilled twice, 10 to 15 minutes apart. We need to wipe off the excess drops from the cheeks. And then if we are not seeing pupillary dilatation even after the installation of drops twice, then we should first examine carefully, because what we may be seeing that there may be changes in the iris which will not allow the pupil to dilate. So it may indicate severe disease. So we do not need to keep dilating, because then we run the risk of systemic toxicity. So here we can see Professor Dogra, who is examining an infant through the wall of the incubator, which is possible. And we should not delay screening of such sick infants just because the child cannot be brought to the clinic. So how to screen? So we should swaddle the baby in a warm linen wrap, and sometimes soothe with a dextrose suck if required. And now the gold standard for examination has been the binocular indirect ophthalmoscope and using a condensing glass, and use of a speculum and wire vectis or an infant scleral depressor is required. So the condensing lenses commonly used are either a 20 diopter lens or a 28 diopter lens. Now, the 28 diopter lens offers a wider view, and for beginners, maybe it may be easier to be able to examine with a 28 diopter, but there is some compromise on magnification. However, with experience, we can even screen with a 20 diopter, and ultimately it depends on the preference of your own preference. So, and then after the the indirect ophthalmoscope, these days we are more and more going into the digital imaging techniques. Why? Because they are more objective. They allow for monitoring of disease progression. They allow for monitoring of response to treatment. So there are a number of digital imaging devices which are available and which can be chosen from. So there are several advantages and disadvantages of each, but I'll just like to name them. So right from a video indirect to the RedCam shuttle to the REDCam 3, which has an additional capability of performing a fluorescein angiograph. We have the smartphone-based imaging, which can be very helpful in low resource settings. And I think Dr. Anubhav has a lot of experience using this smartphone-based imaging system. And then we have the newer wide field cameras. So we are talking of being able to image the retinal periphery. And the newer cameras, some of them are the Forus, which is an indigenously built low cost, and the cost of the Forus is less than 20 lakhs. So this is quite an innovation which we can use in a low resource setting like ours. Then we have some of the new cameras such as the Phoenix Icon. It also has the ability to perform an fluorescein angiography. We have the PanoCam, which has a wireless, the objective camera lens is wireless. And then there are reports of using the Optos wide field imaging system for imaging these infants. However, the positioning traditionally, which is supine, has to be changed to the flying baby position if you have to place the image, to place the infant to be imaged on the Optos. So wide field digital imaging is a boon because it is objective. It is excellent for telescreening, teaching, as well as the counseling of the parents. So what is more important than when we are examining, we should use standard terminology. We should not use vague terms. So for standard for ROP documentation is the International Classification of ROP. The last modification was in 2005. And then we may expect the third round of this classification, maybe this year or next year. So use terms in terms of zone, the stage, the extent, presence or absence of plus disease, and aggressive posterior ROP or pre-plus. So these are the terms that have to be used. So when we start examining with the lens, you should bring that lens closer to the eye to examine first the iris and whether or not there are some abnormal vessels on the iris, which are extending onto the anterior surface of the lens, which we label as a tunica, persistent tunica vasculosa lentis. If this is there, then our antenna should be up, that we may expect severe disease behind, and the pupil is not likely to dilate. We may expect a media haze. This is how a normal vascularized retina would look like. Here we can see that through the REDCam, we have been able to capture the ora where this yellow crosshair is there. And then we can see retinal vessels going right up to the ora. These are the stages. Right from the top left, we have stage 1, which is shown by the white arrow. Then we have stage 2, where the white, the demarcation line develops some volume, which is the ridge. Then on the right side, we see the ridge with extraretinal proliferation, which is stage 3. That means that the new vascularization is going above the plane of the retina. Then we have 4A, a retinal detachment not involving the macula. Then 4B, which is 1D, retinal attachment involving the macula. And the last is stage 5. Also, we can see that in the bottom right are some features where we are not seeing that ill-defined, where there is the junction is ill-defined and we're not seeing any clear ridge. So this is when we see such a thing, our antennas again should be up, that we may be looking into aggressive posterior ROP. This is just an image captured of stage 3 and stage 2 from a Forus camera. Then we have the zones. We all know the zones from the classification. The most posterior location, sorry.
Doctor, if you can come down to your concluding slide, please.
Yeah, sorry. So, okay, just this is aggressive posterior ROP. And this is the pre-plus and plus, because if you're seeing some arteriolar tortuosity early on, then that is pre-plus. So basically, I just want to end with this slide that if you are seeing changes in zone 1, we have to screen in a week or less. If you are seeing changes in zone 2, if you are seeing lower stages, we can follow up 2 weekly. If you are seeing higher stages, for example, 2 or 3, then we have to have a closer follow-up. And if you are seeing changes in zone 3, and if you're not seeing any ROP, but only seeing immature retina, then we can follow up 2 to 3 weekly. And we have to terminate screening once we see complete vascularization or vascularization in zone 3, or the child has reached a PMA of 45 to 50 weeks. So to conclude, we should use standard terminology while describing ROP. We should document our findings clearly. We advise and counsel regarding follow-ups. And when in doubt, please refer timely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. May I request our chairperson to please introduce the next speaker?
Sucheta, go ahead. Suchita has to unmute and then she will introduce the next two speakers.
Yeah,
Go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry. Thank you, Diksha, for a very well presented talk. Next talk is by Dr. Santosh Agrawal, who runs perhaps the largest ROP screening program in the Marathwada region of Maharashtra. And he is going to speak on community centered approach for ROP screening. Dr. Santosh, please.
Thank you, Sucheta, for your kind introduction. Good evening to one and all. And I'm going to share my talk. It is community-centered ROP screening approach. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're loud and clear. We can also see the
Yes, sir,
presentation.
we can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, community-centered ROP screening approach, Aramba Tele ROP model. So, to introduce the topic, retinopathy of prematurity is a disease affecting the retina of premature infants. Immature and incompletely vascularized retina leads to ROP. The contemporary neonatology practices in the premature infants have increased survival rate of the children and which escalate the risk of developing ROP. It is the leading cause of preventable infant blindness in the world. What is the incidence and what is the Indian scenario? In India, there is about 5 million babies born premature every year. The incidence of ROP is around 40 to 50%. It is greater in rural and remote areas. Annual live births in India is around 26 million. And ROP screening is required around 5 million. That is 20% of premature babies. And there is very less ROP experts in India, maybe 100 to 150. And 5 to 10% need treatment in the form of intravit injection or laser. And we already discussed the survival of low birth weight babies have increased nowadays because, and eventually it leads to ROP. So referral rates are already, somebody has told that referral rates are very low. 58% pediatricians refers, 8% pediatricians refers only sometimes, and 34% pediatricians never refer. So there are large number of pediatricians who are unaware of this fact, and there is non-availability of ROP expert in our area. There is apathy on the part of pediatrician as well as ophthalmologist, and dropout rate is also more because there is a lack of awareness in patients too. They are ill-informed and some have financial constraints. Now we're coming to the screening part. BIO is the indirect ophthalmoscopy is the gold standard, but there are some loopholes or there are some limitations. It is very difficult to perform. It requires a lot of time. You can skip some retinal periphery, and it is time consuming, very tedious, and it has subjective value. ROP expert has to visit the NICU. That is a big problem. From your busy practice, you have to go to the NICU and examine the babies. You have to draw a diagram. You have to note down all findings. You have to use depressor. And it is a subjective, as already told, and it is non-reproducible. That is a big problem. And there is no proper documentation as such. So there comes the wide field imaging for ROP screening by using the wide angle fundus camera. It can be used by a trained or semi-trained accredited optometrist or ophthalmic assistant. Since 2008, the Dr. Anand Vinekar has been using this type of screening method. He has developed and validated the KID ROP organization. In 2015, Australian report had come and which also endorsed this type of screening method. Also, Government of India has accepted and adopted this screening model. Now we are using Forus Neo camera. I don't have any financial interest, but it is the only camera available in India, which is indigenous, and it has wide field and it is a portable camera. It is a novel, low cost, indigenously manufactured, and it is developed in India, that is Bangalore. how you will compare with the RedCam, which has been in use for a long time. For us, it is very much comparable to a RedCam. It has LED illumination. It is very lightweight, more compact, portable, and it has 120-degree of lens, which is non-detachable. And cost, already somebody has told that it is less than 20 lakh, that is around 16 to 17 lakh. So the RedCam cost around 70 to 80 lakhs. So as against that, this is very cheap. And the sensitivity and specificity is also 96% and 73% respectively. So what are the advantages of this type of screening? It is low cost, portable, compact, good added features, and most importantly, it is accessible to rural areas, peripheral areas. And there is a we can do mass screening with this type of screening technique or method. In our setup, our expert, he does the screening in 3 minutes only. So he is so much used to that technique. And also, moreover, tele-ROP screening is possible. And treatment is done at NICU or at your own setup. And at-risk babies can be screened in a large extent. Mass screening is possible. That reduces the burden of unmet screening in India. And moreover, it is an objective method, reproducible, and documentation is very important, and that is possible with this technique. And you can have 2-3 opinions, junior's opinion or senior's opinion you can have, and you can prepare your own data, and it helps in counseling and medical legal cases as well. So this is the indirect ophthalmoscopic method of examining the babies. Now, left side is the RedCam, right side is the Forus Neo camera, which is very compact, and it reduces the burden of blindness that could be over 2,400 crore in financial, as far as finance is concerned. What is our model? How we screen, how we do our mass screening or community-based screening? We call it as a Arambha ROP screening project. We are 3 people together. That is a team approach. 2 vitreoretinal specialists and 1 pediatric ophthalmologist. We have come together. We got inspired by Dr. Anand Vinekar and Dr. Sucheta Kulkarni. We refined our knowledge, or we skilled ourselves by attending various workshops and conferences. And we trained our optometrists as well. So we follow 1 day, 1 route, 1 city. So whatever NICUs are coming in the that area, we take care of all the babies in that in those NICUs. So this is the brochure for the patient. This is our information bulletin. This is our report. We note down our findings. This is in the local language. We do circulate to the patients. This is pasted on the wall of the clinic or in the waiting area for awareness purpose. Now, how easy it is to carry. This is a very compact, and you can take it to different places. In the rickshaw, in 2-wheelers. This is screening. I will go through rapidly. Now, this is a tele-screening, or after examining the images and then making the conclusions and follow and treatment schedule. Not only posterior segment, but also anterior segment can be evaluated. So these are different images taken by this Forus Neo camera. And apart from ROP, you can diagnose various posterior segment conditions like coloboma, RD, retinoblastoma through this. This is the unique ROP screening model. Also in HV Desai and also Dr. Anand Vinekar is using this type of model, and Government of India has adopted this method now. In our data from January 2018 to April 2021, around 4,200 babies got screened. 12.35% had ROP treatment given. Sorry, 12.35% has got ROP, and the treatment given was 3.52%. So total treatment were 148. intravenous injection, laser were given. What are the problems with this method?
Sorry, sir, due to time, if you can just conclude the session. Thank you.
Yes, just switch on that. So to conclude, this type of wide angle imaging system do work for mass screening. That I want to give the message. Thank you very much for your kind on listening, patient listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Santosh. And now I would request our chairperson to please invite the next speaker.
Dr. Parag Shah, please.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Santosh. It's a very inspirational and very good work which you are doing there in the Marathwada region. I would like to invite Dr. Anubhav Goyal to give his talk on laser photocoagulation.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I will just share my slides. Are these slides visible?
Yes, sir, the slide is visible. You are good to go.
So my talk is on laser treatment for ROP. So as we all know that we have a lot of number of premature births in India, and India tops the world in terms of prematurity, and one baby is getting born every second in India, and out of these babies, premature babies are 1 in 20 seconds, 15 to 20 seconds. So it's so high. The birth of premature babies is quite high. This is a slide showing the 1 second. That India tops the prematurity in all over the world. And we all know that incidence of ROP is 20 to 50%, and incidence of high risk or treatable ROP, or the ROP which is getting worse, is 10 to 25%. It means 1 out of 10 premature babies are getting blind if we don't treat on time, and 1 out of 820 babies will go blind only and only if we give timely and good treatment to these all premature babies. So timely treatment has importance. So 50% of stage 3 plus ROP also regress spontaneously. So we have to be very rigorous in early examination, timely examination and timely treatment. And most of the babies can regress spontaneously, but all high risk has to be taken care of very well. ICROP has given very good classification in terms of stage, zone, and clock hours. So there are 3 landmark trials which we all are following. Cryo-ROP is nowadays not been followed. It shows importance of cryotherapy, published in 1988. But after that, ETROP and beta-ROP came. ETROP is a landmark trial which is showing importance of laser in ROP, and it has shown significant reduction in unfavorable anatomical outcomes from 27 to 9%, which further reduced after beta-ROP, which is showing importance of bevacizumab, that is intravitreal injection in ROP, published recently. And most of us are following ETROP and beta-ROP both. So ETROP is the landmark trial which has actually shown us the importance of type 1 and type 2 ROP. That importance is because type 1 ROP is a high risk pre-threshold ROP and needs urgent treatment, while type 2 ROP parameters is a low risk pre-threshold ROP and just need observation. So this study also confirms that for zone 1 ROP, injections are doing better, but for zone 2 ROP, laser results are much better as compared to injections. So both have importance, but laser, if we give in zone 2 ROP alone, it can give us very good results. Zone 1 is yes a matter of difference. All these study has also shown that laser has some footfalls, like it can result in reduction in peripheral field effect and can also induce in high myopia after the laser in long-term follow-up of these babies. Anti-VEGF injection though has some adverse events like vitreous and peritoneal hemorrhage and transient vesicular shielding and all those problems, but still laser is a gold standard treatment and is being followed as a gold standard treatment by most of us. Though some of them prefer anti-VEGF followed by rescue laser after 2 to 3 weeks, especially in cases with zone 1 or half zone ROP or AP-ROP, just to rescue the zone 1, then following the laser after the zone 1 is vascularized. So this is a very, very good article published by our great mentors of ROP. So Badra ma'am is among us right now. This article has given us very, very bright guidelines about laser in ROP. Standard of care is still diode laser, but nowadays we are using double frequency green laser, which is 532 nanometer. It can be done under topical anesthesia as compared to cryo. Laser can be done in incubator and can be given through the walls of incubator. This is excellently good. Repeatable in case of inadequate or poor response to the babies. Visual outcomes are better than cryo, though visual outcomes are not as good as injection, but both are doing, injection and laser are doing very good. After descent to laser can be, it should be done, or any treatment for ROP should be done within 24 to 72 hours of final decision making. Laser should be preferably done in NICU or under the neonatologist supervision. Baby should be fed 30 minutes before laser, just to prevent vomiting during the course of laser. Avoid excessive use of dilating drop, which can cause apneic episode during the laser. Laser can take 60 to 90 minutes. So baby should allow feeding between the laser session, so that baby should not be dehydrated. All these wire vectors should be used to depress and rotate the eye for good laser till the ora serrata. Eye should not be depressed too hard, because it can cause result in intraocular hemorrhage and corneal edema, which can create problem for visualization during the laser. Treat anterior avascular retina, that is from the ridge or fibroscular proliferation till the ora serrata nicely, without leaving any script area in all 360 degrees. Try to give laser in both the eyes together. One single session can take 3,000 to 4,000 spots in single eye in all these avascular areas of retina. Treat all easily accessible areas first, then go to difficult areas. What I prefer is treating the temporal half of one eye and nasal half of other eye, and then rotating the baby upside down and treating the nasal half of other eye and temporal half of other eye, so that the baby is also comfortable. I am also comfortable. Laser is also in the same position without disturbing machine. Also, baby can be treated very easily. So the view angle should be straight. The lens should coincide, and for good viewing and good laser marks. The ora serrata in infants is much anterior as compared to adults. It is 1 millimeter beyond the limbus. So during depression, one should keep in mind what area to depress. And cornea should be kept hydrated regularly, and avoid confluent burns. Give near confluent burns to avoid overcharring of the avascular retina. Check all areas from untreated. Check all areas at the end of the treatment. None of the areas should left untreated. After the laser, hand over the child over to the parents, and you have to advise steroids for 1 week after the laser to avoid to reduce post laser inflammation. And you should advise parents on your NICU staff not to feed the baby for 15, 20 or 30 minutes after the laser, because baby is exhausted. And all signs of plus Ds must regress completely before discontinuing the treatment of laser in multiple session or at the end of your follow-up. So this is how we have to screen with indirect, and laser has to be given in the NICU. This is an example on the left showing this is the avascular retina. You can see the ridge and the whole avascular retina with plus disease. And this is how you have to give near confluent burn in all this avascular retina from the ridge till the ora serrata nicely. If you give laser nicely, this kind of aggressive APROP can also give extremely good results with single sitting laser. So this article has also shown the signs of regression of ROP, which is also important. And good media clarity, good pupil dilatation, all NV should regress, and all vessels, retina should vascularize till the edge. This is an example showing hybrid ROP in zone 1 ROP with ridge in the near the fovea and right eye and left eye, given anti-VEGF, then recurrence after 2 to 3 weeks, then laser treatment given. Another example with the zone 2 ROP, basically you can see ridge in zone 2 with a plus disease, and laser was given alone, and the laser has given very good results. So to conclude, premature infant is not born with ROP. ROP worsening has a very small window of 7 to 10 days, so you have to be very, very cautious. Early timely treatment is the key, and laser is still the gold standard treatment. Though for zone 1 ROP or APROP, you can give injections followed by laser. This is an example. How can you save eye in after 6 months with very good results after timely treatment in ROP? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anubhav, to wind up on time. Thank you so much. May I now request our chairperson to please invite the next speaker.
I think Dr. Sharad can take over now, the next two speakers.
Dr. Sharat, could you please unmute yourself and switch on your camera?
Yeah. So now we ask Dr. Abhishek Das about surgical management of ROP. Dr. Abhishek.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you, AOS, for giving me the opportunity to talk on this topic, surgical management of ROP. So vitrectomy for ROP is one of the most challenging problems facing all the vitreoretinal surgeons, but it is one of the easiest way to tackle if it is done properly. So you need a good vitrectomy, and you have to tackle all the tractional bands which you encounter during the surgery. So there are lens to ridge, ridge to ridge, ridge to periphery, and ridge to disc. So these are all visible on the diagram. And you don't need a PVD induction. You don't need to do any vitreous base shaving. But why it is difficult? Because of space constraint. So lens occupies a large portion of the posterior segment in the infants, and this restricts the intraocular manipulation. And thereby it also increases the risk of mechanical damage. If you see the axial length, it is approximately 16.5 mm in infants with respect to 24.5 mm in adults. Vitreous volume is also approximately 1.5 mm. Ciliary body is flat with a short pars plana with anterior displaced ciliary processes. And entry is actually through pars plica because pars plana is not developed by the time. And this is the approximate distance we use for the entry from the limbus. And most of the ROP patients who require surgery comes under 6 months. So we take 1.5 mm from the limbus. Surgical indications are towards stage 4A, stage 4B, and stage 5. In stage 4A, it's active vascularity with more than 3 clock hours. Stage 4B with active vascularity, and stage 5 is bilateral and also depends on the configuration and less than 6 months of age. And this diagram shows the timing of the surgery. So phase 2 of ROP starts approximately after 32 weeks. And within 36 to 37 weeks where the threshold ROP happens. So by that week, we can do the laser therapy for the patient. And after that, the disease may progress or regress. So if the timing of the surgery would be when the baby is around the due date, that is after 40 weeks. So 40 to 42 weeks is the time where we can take the surgery, because there the vascularity is reduced and the fibrosis is more because of increased levels of TGF beta. So you need a pre-operative evaluation. We need a anesthesia fitness. We have to educate the parents and awareness of the disease. We have to do an ultrasound of the eye, and we have to do an indirect ophthalmoscopy before the surgery. There are various surgical options from scleral buckling, lens sparing vitrectomy, which is commonly used in stage 4 ROP, lensectomy with vitrectomy, and open sky vitrectomy, which is preserved for stage 5 ROP. So the era began with 20 gauge vitrectomy, where we have to do a conjunctival peritomy, and we used to do this. We used to use these bulky instruments to enter the vitreous cavity. And you can see once we are inside, you can see the white tractional bands which are encountered. And then came the era of 25 and 27 gauge vitrectomy, which can be done transconjunctivally, and you don't need the sutures. So once we enter the vitreous cavity, you can see the white tractional bands, which you encounter the 4 types of bands, which I mentioned before. And you have to just need a core vitrectomy and release those tractional bands, and the retina falls by itself. Then triamcinolone assisted lens sparing vitrectomy. Here we inject triamcinolone acetonide around 0.03 ml in the vitreous cavity to stain the vitreous, because it's an insoluble solution. So with that, we can easily identify the vitreous transvitreal traction bands. We can also delaminate the posterior hyaloid very nicely, but obviously we have to clear off all the triamcinolone acetonide particles, because it may cause rise in IOP later and cause glaucoma also. Then we have adopted a new modified 25 gauge technique, where we use a 42 band and cut into two pieces, 2 by 2 mm, and we use small cubes, which is about 2 by 2 mm, and through that cube, we just insert the trocar cannula, 25 gauge. So with that, we reduces both the size of trocar as well as cannula. So cannula size is almost reduced from 4 mm to 2.7 mm, and also the trocar size reduced to almost 6.7 mm. So with that, we can minimize the risk of iatrogenic break, especially when you face some anteriorly displaced retina. We have also been collaborated with Orolab, and we're trying to make pediatric trocar cannulas for pediatric vitreoretinal surgeries, still on the way. These are pre and post lens sparing vitrectomy photos. We have also published outcomes of transconjunctival sutureless 27 gauge vitrectomy for stage 4 ROP, and which has great results. And in stage 5 ROP, there are 4 types of tractional areas which you have to encounter. It's ridge to ora, ridge to ridge, ridge to lens, and stalk to lens or retina. So this was one of the stage 5 ROP where anterior segment approach was done, and the limbal approach, 0.5 to 1 mm from the limbus. And after doing the lensectomy, there were sheets of membranes. With the help of 26 gauge needle, we have removed those sheets, because sometimes we encounter multiple sheets and we have to meticulously remove those sheets, and then we can inject Helion Visco to open the funnel. So dissecting, so the initiation we do with a cruciate manner, and then we try to dissect and remove all the white membrane over the retina. So our experience in that article were anatomical and visual outcomes of stage 4 and 5. So we took 33 eyes of 29 babies, and we had a success of about 45%. So anatomical success, we got 90% in case of stage 4A, followed by stage 4B, and then stage 5 ROP. So the pre and post surgical photos. And sometimes we face this kind of challenging babies when we see stage 4 active, very active, and suddenly you realize these are the right and left eye of the same baby. So what do you do then? Actually, 4. So we do a bilateral sequential surgery for these babies, and we have also published this. And anatomical success 100% is in case of stage 4A, followed by stage 4B. No patient developed any sign of infection on endophthalmitis, because we have prepared the other eye the same way as a new eye. And post-operatively, parents were also instructed to maintain sterility in between applying the drops in each eye. And also it is published in Ophthalmology 2016. And so because this is feasible, because you don't have to repeat general anesthesia. It's undesirable and impractical. And this was one of the case we last week we encountered active, very active vascular stage 5 ROP. Everything was detached, and then we injected Avastin. And on the 3rd day, you can see the fibrovascular proliferation actually contracted in the left eye and caused hemorrhages. And the 3rd day we took for surgery. And just a video clip, and you can see the modified 25 gauge where the 42 band cube is used, and just releasing the fractional bands. And at last, we are doing the fluid air exchange, and it is as well as sutureless. So thank you. So ROP surgery can be a smooth sailing, but it's always on the edge of a disaster. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your presentation. Now, may I request our chairperson to invite the next speaker, please?
We invite Dr. Srijita Mitra for the next talk. How to follow up till the 2nd birthday.
Not yet.
Sir, Dr. Srijita Mitra is not here. Can we invite the next speaker?
I think that was the last talk of this session.
Yes.
All right. So in that case, if we have any questions for any of the speaker, we can do so. We have 4 minutes with us.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment. In the first talk, it was mentioned that, at the time of screening, we make a decision whether to stop for the screening or not. So what we find is that many people, they have screened and then they ask the patient that you don't need to come because your retina is mature in the first visit. There are few caveats in that. Number one, sometimes the vessels are not very clear and we may mistake that the retina is fully vascularized, whereas it may just be few vessels around the disc, and we may be looking at the choroidal vessels and mistake them for retinal vessels. And this has happened many times. It has happened to me also. So the dictum is that if the baby is very small, suppose it was 30 weeks when you screened or 31 weeks, and you think that the retina is mature, that's not the age for retina to mature, although retina can be mature at that age. So please screen once more. So for mature retina, for us to say mature retina, the vessels should reach the ora 1. The vessels, each vessel we should see should be dichotomously branching. So we should follow the vessel and see each vessel is dividing into 2. The pupil should be fully and easily dilated, and the retina should have a sheen, which is because of the ILM layer. When the retina is immature, the internal limiting membrane is not there, so you don't get that bright shining reflex from the retina. Whereas in a mature retina, it has a bright shining reflex. So I think it's a good practice. I still do it, that after I see and baby is small, suppose it is not 40 weeks or 39 weeks, then I usually say that, come back in 2 or 3 weeks. So it's always good to do one more screening to be sure. And every time, please look at the nasal side, because in severe disease where we miss, where it seems that the retina is attached and everything is good, the severe AP, ROP and all hybrid, they start on the nasal side, very close to the disc. So then you will pick it up. If you just look at the periphery, you may miss it. So that was very important message I wanted to say. Yeah, Diksha, you want to say something?
Ma'am, just to continue what you were saying, that because first screening, just one screening is never enough. But sometimes we also get referrals wherein they had started screening timely, but then the follow-up after the first screening was advised review after 4 to 6 weeks. So that is not there in the protocol. So we should know that depending on the zone, then the screening follow-ups, and never does it extend beyond 3 weeks at any given time. So if you have done that, so I mean 4 to 6 weeks is not the protocol that should be followed.
Can I ask a question to
Ma'am,
Dr.
I just
Subhadra?
want to, sorry, ma'am.
Should I? Yeah. So, sorry, Dr. Anubhav, you can go ahead.
Okay. Ma'am, recently I have seen some of the COVID delivered babies, mother is having COVID positivity. Those babies are having sudden worsening of ROP within 2 to 3 weeks or earlier. So if the mother is in this duration, especially if the mother is giving history of COVID infection during the pregnancy or at the time of delivery, babies delivered to such mothers should be screened before 2 weeks. At least one visit should be done. This is, I personally feel what I have seen in these last 1.5 years.
Yeah, I think very important point that, there's a new disease. We are still learning. So please document, please publish. And I think it's a good idea. What we have said is that any mother who has any infection, they have virus infections, they have rubella, something. So those babies or syndromic babies, we always screen immediately after birth or within 1 week or whatever. So not only for this, but for other disease also. So same thing will hold true for COVID babies also, whether they are preterm or not preterm. I think it's a good idea if we get this type of babies to screen and to document whether they were normal, not normal, and then see again in 2 weeks, because we don't know what manifestations they will have or not have and how the disease is affecting ROP. We know that any inflammatory mediators in the patient's body, because of any inflammatory reasons, they can have worsening of the disease. So inflammation is one of the things which worsens the disease. So please, this is a new disease. I think all of us should be vigilant, document and discuss. It's very good. Go ahead, Sucheta, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So my question was, is it worth operating upon stage 5 ROP? This is a common question that comes to the mind of ROP experts, I think, all over. So
I just want to ask, is it worthwhile operating severe endophthalmitis with PLPR vision? Is it worth operating, advanced RD with PVR grade D1? So I think if we operate patient of endophthalmitis where the wound is leaking, where the cornea abscess is there, we may salvage 10%, 15% eyes, but we always do that because that is the correct thing to do. So I don't know why this stage 5 ROP is such a mental block. There's a detachment. Our work is to reattach the retina. Okay. And if we don't make these patients go round and round from one center to other, we will see the stage 5 also early stage before the subretinal cholesterol has developed, before the eye has reached a pre-thysical stage. And we can get very good results. It's only a matter of approach. We must operate them early, learn the technique. I'm so happy so many people are doing. And we will see the results. The results you may see in 10%, 15%, 50%, whatever. But you will see the results, both functional and anatomical. So detached retina demands our surgical skills. Okay, and the other thing is that yes, if it is more than a year-old child or it's a lot of subretinal cholesterol, then it is already too late. But again, stage 5 is also a progressive disease. It starts with just a tractional detachment, then it progresses to ciliary body detachment, to corneal scarring, to subretinal cholesterol. So whenever you see it, if you see it early, please do it. If you are not doing, refer to somebody who's doing.
Thank you.
All right. So we are here to the end of this session. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all our chairpersons. I'd like to thank Dr. Subhadra, Dr. Suchita, Dr. Parag, and Dr. Sharad, who are our chairpersons. Thank you so much for chairing the session. And I would also like to thank all our speakers who had given lovely and a wonderful presentation out here. Thank you so much. It was lovely having you here.
Great
Thank you.
work. Keep on
Thanks.
doing.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone. Bye.
Thank
See you in the
Bye.
next ROP session. We have
Thank
three,
you.
4 sessions
Bye.
in this conference. More sessions follow. So please attend. We have national symposium, we have instruction courses, we have other free papers. So